So we will be live at the Detroit Regional Chamber Policy Conference on Mackinac Island Thursday and Friday in the lobby of Grand Hotel, and that will be brought to you by the Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan, Clark Hill, AARP, Family Resource Centers, and Health Partners, too. And we look forward to seeing you there. Doug Pratt is with us from the Michigan Education Association. Brooks Patterson, in talking about this conference, 1,500 people will attend, and the chair of the Ford Motor Company and General Motors and other people will be there. And he says that when Governor Snyder comes, that he's riding a real high, and they may throw rose petals in front of him when he arrives on Mackinac Island. There are people who would like to throw horse manure, too, are there not?
Well, I think there's already some horse manure on the ground on the island, so I don't think we have to throw
That's
any.
taken care of.
I would not. I don't actually dispute what Brooks is saying. I mean, the people who were on that island, the business owners who got almost a $2 billion tax break from this governor, they should be throwing rose petals. They should be very happy right now. It's the public school students of this state who aren't going to be on that island who are the ones who are going to be suffering.
Did the governor ever really intend to have a $430 whatever cut per pupil, or do you think that was, sort of negotiating?
Well, I mean, some of it's always negotiating in politics, but I've also, in the couple of months that this governor's been in office, he doesn't seem to subscribe to the normal political rules and throw out numbers there just to negotiate. I don't know.
That number ended up being what, 100 and something?
Well, it depends on how you look at the numbers.
Oh,
I mean,
really?
the fact is, it's almost $1 billion that's been cut out of public education. A lot of people forget that they cut $170 per student last year, and that hole didn't get filled. Last year, it got filled with federal stimulus money. This year, they just have to figure out how to deal with that hole. So it adds up. It compounds over years. Different districts are getting different cuts because some of them get more declining enrollment funding, or used to. Some of them get different categorical funding, different programs to help students, at-risk programs. That funding got slashed in all those programs.
But it could have been worse?
It could have been worse.
Did all of the marching and protesting down the street here, did that help?
I think it showed that the Republicans, that there are lots of people out there who are concerned about public education and care about public education.
Did the strike vote help? The MEA had that strike vote, and no one ever told me how it came out. Do you know?
No, actually, I don't.
You don't?
Those results are confidential with the
I see.
president. But I think, in the end, this isn't over with yet. The fact is, they didn't need to cut a dime out of public education. They didn't need to. They had a surplus of money in the school aid fund, a surplus that they turned into almost $1 billion cut. And how did they do that? By allowing for the purchase of rose petals on Mackinac Island through a $2 billion tax cut. That's the reason for this. The reason for cutting education, taxing pensions, taxing the working poor, taxing the middle class, it's not just because they have some predetermined distaste for those groups. It's because they needed to figure out a way to pay for a $2 billion tax break. And there's limits to how you can pay for that without slashing those services that this public in this state believes in. And public education is at the top of the list. Every public opinion survey I saw throughout this whole process, 60, 70, 80% opposition to these K-12 cuts. That's not just sheer policy opposition. That's a value statement. And the Republicans just ignored it because their value was, we need to do this tax cut for businesses.
Does it fall right down party lines?
Oh, pretty much. I mean, I don't know that there were some Republicans who broke ranks and voted against these budgets, and I applaud them for doing that. But the fact is, the leadership of that party, the leadership in the House and the Senate, and certainly the governor's office, wanted to do this and got exactly what they wanted and got exactly what they were going to do. And that's just it. Elections have consequences. And this is exactly what they've been pushing since last November. They weren't telling the voters that they wanted to tax pensions and slash public schools. That's not a good way to get elected. But
Or stay in office?
well, but that's the other side of this. Elections have consequences, and so do the votes that lawmakers take. And those consequences are going to last straight through November of 2012. And people are going to keep talking about this. Voters are not going to forget what the Republican lawmakers who voted for these budgets and these taxes did to public education.
Where will the cuts be most noticeable?
I think over the last decade, I mean, we've been cutting public education. We've been dealing with fewer resources. We've been making sacrifices. School employees have been making concessions at local bargaining tables. The fat's been cut. You're going to start to see this in key core areas: transportation, athletics, the amount of advanced classwork that can be done in a school district, technology, class sizes. Class sizes are going to go through the roof. This is going to be readily apparent because all of the different ways and the ways that school districts have tried to keep this away from the students and out of the public eye, it's not going to work anymore because the resources just aren't there.
What is meant by best practices?
Force your school employees to pay more. Balance the budget on the back of your employees. That's what best practices really is about. There is a way for you to get more money from the state if you subscribe to certain best practices. And all of them have to do with employee compensation, with outsourcing jobs, with service consolidation, and doing the same or more with less, which is all well and good, but these are things that school districts have been doing for years, and it hasn't solved the problem. I can't remember the number of times I've been on your show, and we've talked about the fact that this is not a spending problem in public education. This is a fundamental problem with how we fund schools and how we have a tax structure that doesn't meet the 21st century. And let me tell you, slashing $2 billion in corporate taxes doesn't solve the problem. It just makes it worse.
What happens next?
Well, for the governor has said he wants to reinvent public education in the state between now and the 4th of July. So I have a feeling that we're going to be just as busy as we were when we come back from Mackinac. But I think they're going to be taking and looking at things like stripping collective bargaining rights away from public employees, away from public school employees. They're going to be looking at putting even more emphasis on high-stakes standardized tests, which is something that parents hate. We already put way too much emphasis on the MEP and the ACTs and all these other tests that we give kids. It's going to get worse. So those are the kind of things that we're going to come back. Now, they're going to say that it's all about tenure and getting rid of quote-unquote bad teachers. The fact is, if you wanted to do that, you can take some of the reforms to the tenure process that we've talked about and that we're willing to work with lawmakers on, making the tenure process shorter and cheaper to get rid of truly bad teachers. But that's not what this is about. I mean, you can tell by one thing. In the tenure bills they're considering downtown, there's something called mutual consent. If the principal doesn't want you in their building, they can just say, no, I don't want you in your building, and then you go on unpaid leave. That's not about bad teachers. There's not that many bad teachers in Michigan that the principals have to have that kind of say.
Will you stay in close touch?
Absolutely, always, Michael Patrick.
Thank you very much. Doug Pratt from the Michigan Education Association. It's Michael Patrick Shields on Tuesday, not Monday. Back in a flash.